and apologies for being late.
No
I'd like to
problem.
call this
Good
meeting
evening.
to order. A roll call has been taken and everyone here will be voting, Doug and Pete and myself. First on the agenda is approval of minutes for meetings from November 4th.
So moved.
Doug, so Doug has a motion on the floor. Pete, are you going to second it?
Second, Pete.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
This is Doug. Aye.
Pete, aye.
Unanimous, so moved. Next is approval of minutes from the special meeting on December 2nd.
Doug, so moved.
Pete, second.
There's a motion on the table. All in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
Motion is passed unanimously. Communications, Dan,
I don't have anything for you tonight.
and no public hearings. So that brings us to old business, IWWCC number 21-12, 555 through 575 Norwich Avenue, Panema South Mill. Dan, if you want to give a overview, and then we can ask Mr. Hanfield.
Sure, I'll just read what's here. It's the Panema South Mill. It's an application for land disturbance activities within the upland review area for grading, installation of drainage and stormwater treatment with connection to existing drainage pipes, installation of a river walk and linear park along the existing stone masonry retaining wall, repair and replacement of existing driveway and landscaping. It's application and property of 555 South Mill LLC and 575 South Mill LLC. Paula O'Neill is the managing member. And I'm going to let Brandon share his screen so he can go through the project with you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. You should be seeing my screen pop up now. For the record, my name is Brandon Hanfield with the Antique River Consultants, a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. Here representing the owner and applicant 555 South Mill LLC, and I believe also with me on the meeting is Phil Biondo, the owner's project manager and representative. Our application was accepted by the commission at your November 4th meeting. As you just approved the minutes from our site walk back in December 2nd. But this is our first time presenting the project formally, so I'll briefly go through the project, describe the existing site and our regulated activities, and then hand it over to the commission for any questions. So what you have in front of you is the title sheet. What I'll do is I'll go right to an existing conditions aerial overlay. So this is our survey on top of the 2019 aerial. Just so you get a picture of the existing conditions from above. For orientation, our property is outlined in orange. So you see two properties, 555 Norwich Avenue is here, 575 Norwich Avenue is the larger parcel with the Panema South Mill in the middle. And you see Panema Landing, which is the building visible from the street. To the left of the page is north. And you'll see the Panema North Mill in the image here. To the west, you'll see Norwich Avenue, as well as the intersection with Providence Street or Route 169. To the east or the top of the page, you'll see the Shetucket River, which is the location of our regulated watercourse. And it's a little difficult to see, but right along the property line to the east is a 10 to 13 foot high stone masonry retaining wall. The river is at the bottom of that retaining wall, and the inland wetlands are actually the face of the retaining wall. So there's no land between that wall and the existing river. And then to the south or to the right is another old mill complex associated with the historic Panema Mill. In terms of the existing site, as I stated before, the Panema Mill or the Panema South Mill is in the middle. Access to the site is from Norwich Avenue through the existing site development drive that serves the North Mill. That same drive serves Panema Landing as well. There is no way to get to the back of the site from the west. So right now, as you come to the back of the site, this is a very large retaining wall, and there's no physical access for vehicles other than stairs for pedestrians. So the access to the site, to the rear of the site or the east, comes from Route 169 in a rear gravel passway that parallels the river, travels north until you get onto our site. Let's see. In terms of topography, as I stated before, there is a high point along the entire north and west. So Route 97 or Norwich Avenue is substantially higher than the building, and it continues to slope in an easterly direction towards the Shetucket River. That retaining wall, again, retains about 13 feet of historic parking lot before going down to the river itself. Vegetation, you do see some vegetation in this area. In general, that is regrowth of old compacted gravel parking and building areas. Most of the vegetation is immature invasive species and shrubs. Some of it's since been cleared, but in general, there's no real mature vegetation on this site that would be considered worth saving. As I stated before, the wetlands are to the east, which is the embankment of the Shetucket River and the bottom of the retaining wall. They were delineated in the field by James Sipperly in August of 2020, and he redelineated the original delineation for the North Mill. Again, they both agree that the wall itself was the limit of wetlands. One other thing to point out on this plan, you'll see this blue dashed line along the easterly boundary, and it extends slightly up here. Those are FEMA special flood hazard area lines. So the one closer to the river along the easterly boundary would be your FEMA floodway. And then where it breaks off here and goes further to the northwest, that is the difference between the FEMA Zone AE, or the 100-year floodplain, and the 500-year floodplain. So in general, most of our site is outside of a regulated FEMA area, except for the very limits along the retaining wall and a small low spot in the northeast corner. Just before getting to the proposed site, I'll just quickly click through changing the aerial so you can kind of get a feel of what this site was before its current redevelopment phases. So this is the same survey on top of the 2004 aerial. And the reason I wanted to show it to you mainly was to show the limit of activity in the rear of the building. So a lot of this has since been demolished and removed, but you see an old building and compacted gravel parking areas at the center, or the center east side of the mill building. And then you see that, you can see the delineation of our survey shows the former parking pad. And if I go further into 1934, you can see that same boiler building still present. And then you see another building on top associated with, again, here's the limit of the pad we surveyed, and here's the old remnants of a building. So in general, everything to the east of this building along the river was occupied by part of the mill building or access drives or parking, and was basically entirely used up to the limits of the existing stone masonry retaining wall. Any questions on the existing site before we go to what we're proposing? All right. This would be sheet 2 of your plan set. The only difference is we turned on some color and I folded it on top of the 2019 aerial. So again, you can see the North Mill to the left or north, and Shetucket River would be to the east. What we are proposing is to redevelop the existing mill structure into multifamily apartments, and there'll be 146 units total, divided over 3 floors. Main access to the site will be again from the Norwich Avenue intersection, which already exists. So this is the main access now. We will be improving the current driveway at the northwest corner and then installing parking or constructing parking mainly for the multifamily building, but also for the redevelopment of Panema Landing. Access will be in a counterclockwise direction. We will be removing a small portion of a connector building between the South Mill and the adjacent building. So right now, there's no physical access to the rear. This connector will be removed, and we'll be constructing a road between those two buildings, serving a new parking lot, again, that basically tapers down to the basement level at this point here, where we'll be matching existing grade. We will be reconnecting to the exterior or the rear passway along the river. So again, that passway starts at the southeast corner and ends at the northeast corner. We'll be basically widening and paving that slightly just to make it conforming with the zoning regulations at a 20-foot width. We'll also be providing some parking, and this parking is mainly to serve this recreational use along the river, which I will get into on the next sheet. On this plan, just as a representation, this teal line would be your limit of the 100-foot upland review area. So everything between this teal line and the river would be considered a regulated activity and described in our application. All right, let's see. So just this is the sheet 3 from your plan set. Not a whole lot different. I just stripped out the 2019 aerial, and there's more detail on the layout of the site. Just to go through those regulated activities. Again, we'll be improving the existing gravel passway along the river, installing parking for use of this linear riverine path and park. A trash enclosure will be installed into the embankment. There's currently a retaining wall here that we'll be building it into. And mainly, immediately adjacent to the river, we'll be cutting down the invasive growth, installing a stone dust pathway parallel with the top of retaining wall. We'll be adding a number of native plantings between the path and the driveway. So these will be shrubs and trees, and we can see that in the landscaping plan. And then between the path and the wall, there'll be a combination of conservation seed to provide a riparian buffer, and where we show a park area with some benches and an overlook over towards the falls, that'll be a maintained grass area. This is sheet number 4 of your plan set, which is the grading and drainage and utility plan. In general, I just wanted to show this mainly for the drainage. What we are proposing is to pick up all the drainage from the front of the site and discharge it again in a counterclockwise direction following the parking areas and connecting it into an existing manhole at the bottom of this retaining wall right here in the northeast corner. That manhole currently discharges directly into the Shetucket River through the stone retaining wall. So I did go down there and inspect it. That discharge point is frankly a stone masonry arch structure about 5 feet wide, 4 feet high. The state road and the North Mill both already discharged through this pipe, and we'll be connecting into it, and there is sufficient capacity to do that. Before connecting, we will be installing a stormwater treatment structure. That stormwater treatment structure will be sized to handle the first inch of flow on all of the new paved surfaces within our area. So currently there's no treatment on our site for any surfaces. What we're proposing to do is anything collected from our pavement will pass through this treatment structure before discharging to the existing system in the river. Roof water will continue to discharge either through the existing system to the north, or will connect to our new collection system and enter the same point. Let's see. And the last sheet I have here is our erosion sedimentation control plan. It is a fully developed site. There's not a whole lot we can do with it. So our main controls are going to be located within your regulated area. So Along the top of that retaining wall, we're going to have a layer of silt fence installed, as well as a number of hay bale or stone check dams as flow goes towards the north. And once we get to that northeast corner, which is the discharge point, we'll beef up the controls there and have a double layer of silt fence or silt fence backed up with hay bales. And we'll also install a silt trap at that point so that we can collect any overland flow and silt before it discharges to the collection system. The erosion control plan meets the 2002 guidelines. And before handing it over to the commission, I just want to note we did receive the engineer's comments related to the drainage, and we noted the information in the memorandum that Dan prepared. I did submit drainage calculations to the engineer related to the overall stormwater runoff from the site, and to confirm that we don't need to attenuate anything before discharge to the river. What we do owe him are the pipe flow calculations related to the size of the pipes that bring it around and connect here. We did submit to him the treatment calculations today, just to confirm that a single point source treatment is adequate to satisfy the DEP manual. And what we are proposing is in compliance with 2004 water quality manual. So we will certainly give him the remainder of the calculations related to the pipe drainage, but I did want to note that we did prepare and submit the calculations that show our water quality will be fully treated and actually will be an improvement over existing conditions before discharge to the river. I think that covers everything on my initial presentation, so be happy to answer any questions.
Doug, shall we start with you?
I don't have any questions of the applicant at this time, other than to get a little bit more detail on the size of the point treatment facility. Because right now it only shows up on the documentation as a dot.
That's correct. And it really is a dot, but it's more of a 6-foot diameter manhole that's got multiple swirl chambers in it. So there's an inlet port or manhole to inspect the inlet side and a manhole to inspect the outlet side. Inside that, you'll get separation of debris, pollutants, and sediment and floatables before discharging out the north side. So all low flows that come from our collection system will pass through. They will hydrodynamically swirl through it to remove all of the pollutants and sediments before discharging. High flows associated with a larger storm, there would be an internal bypass in this structure. So once we get above that 1 inch, the flow will bypass the treatment side, or which is down low, and will just continue through. And the principle being, those higher flows don't carry the same pollutant load as that first inch. So we only focus on that first inch.
It's a large area that you're proposing to drain through a single point. And so I'm also curious as a result as to the proposed management plan, because I suspect you're going to need to be on top of that unit quite a bit.
It is a relatively large area. I did run those calculations and sent them over to Brian Long. We have to treat about 2 CFS for that storm, which it's not overly large. So the size of this structure is a HydroWorks HG6 or equal. Their structures range from a 4 HG4 up to, I think, a 10. So we're in that lower to middle half of what we typically spec for a treatment structure. Yes, there is a specific maintenance chart that will be employed, and we do include some of that operations and maintenance on this plan. Once the final treatment structure is selected, there will be guidelines that go directly with that structure on how frequently it has to be inspected and cleaned out. I will say this, a lot has changed over the last 20 years in my inspections of these structures. We used to get a lot more sediment in them when people were using sand as well as salt. With the less sand that's put onto these parking lots and more of a treated salt, we do get a lot more sediment, but we still get the same amount of floatables and debris, a lot of leaves and stuff like that. So it will be inspected, but typically you'll see the inspection timeline altered as they go and see it over the first year. You inspect it twice in the first year. That next year, if it was full, you keep doing that, but you might tick that back to once a year after the winter season and only have to clean it out once. So we will have that detailed operations as part of our submission to the engineer.
Okay, so Rich, I yield the floor back.
Peter, do you have any questions?
Yeah, in the upland area, is there any monitor wells in there?
I believe you're in this area here.
In the, no, the upland part of that area, that regulated area?
Oh,
In-
Are there
yeah,
any-
Are there monitors in there at all?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the survey. I know there is a current environmental remediation program going on. There are monitoring wells on this site, and there will be cleanup of a few areas where polluted soils were detected. And I think a lot of those soils coincide with the original location of the boiler room, and I think an electricity generating building that were located here. So those areas will be cleaned up and remediated. And I do know that they have monitoring out there. I just don't know where the wells are.
Okay, just checking. Now, that driveway along the river walk there, is that gonna remain impermeable or permeable, or you're gonna put asphalt there? I didn't see.
That will be a 20-foot wide paved driveway. And what we did to minimize concentrating flows is we mimicked the sheet flow runoff where we could. So everything to the south of the trash enclosure will continue to be a sheet flow onto the vegetated surface as it currently flows today off of the gravel and pavement areas. And the same applies on the far north where currently there's sheet flow into the vegetation. The only spot we don't have sheet flow runoff is between the trash enclosure and our catch basin here. And the reason was we wanted to collect this stormwater and put it through treatment, as we do have a trash enclosure there and some formal parking. So we wanted to make sure we got that into the treatment area.
Okay. Now, did you say that there is no attenuation needed, or that is yet to be determined?
There is no attenuation needed for this site. So we reviewed existing and proposed conditions. There is a quote unquote increase in impervious surfaces as compared to existing. And the reason for that is partially because I did not take into account any of the historic development that's been removed. And you saw those pictures where there was a building here and the generating building here, and all of this was parked. Those areas are currently, and I'll go back, vegetation. I considered them vegetation in my analysis. So part of the reason there's an increase is because I didn't take credit for the historical activities. The main reason we're not attenuating here, though, is the fact that we're directly discharging to the Shetucket River, and we're discouraged from attenuating when we're this close to a very large river water source because of the differences in sizes of watershed and the differences in time of concentration. So what happens for the Shetucket River, which floods obviously, and sometimes substantially, is if we retain our water, we're actually going to encourage aligning our discharge with the peak flow of the river. and you can exacerbate flood problems by doing that, even if you're actually attenuating on your site. So they encourage us to discharge directly without attenuation to get our peak flows flushed through the river when it's at its lowest point during or before or after a storm. And I did put that on the plans as a note, and also submitted that in narrative form to the city engineer, and he did agree with that approach. And it is part of the DEP water quality manual as well.
Okay, and that vortex separator, that was also approved by the town engineer, or?
So I submitted the data on the treatment, and I gave him a specified structure, and I'll get back to it here. So I did submit that to him. We will be finalizing those calculations with him before the plans are finalized and filed. So I noted there'd be a condition that he'd have final approval of the structure, and we will make sure he has that information to do it.
Okay, very well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan, do you have any other comments?
I really don't. We've covered most of everything that I had, and the main points in my memo were regarding the city engineer's comments. And I had a discussion earlier today with Brandon, and we're in the process of either, you know, he sent the information over to Brian, and there'll be an erosion and sediment control bond estimate. And that really was it from my point of view. I do have some, actually, before I take the screen back over, does anyone have any other questions that would require looking at the plan?
I don't. This is Doug.
I'm good, Pete.
Okay, I note, Dan, that you've got 12 points here.
Yep, let me just bring that right back up. So we have our usual boilerplate language that's in here, and then just a few notes about revised plans and the ENS bond estimate. So I'd waive the reading of those if someone makes a motion, but they're up on the screen, and I'll send them to the clerk for the minutes.
So I move that we can waive the reading of the memo.
Pete, second.
The motion on the table, all in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
Unanimous, so moved. We next must determine whether or not this is a significant activity, or whether a public hearing is necessary.
So Doug, I would move that this is not a significant activity and does not require a public hearing, given the extensive disturbance of the site already, and the fact that everything that is being done will actually be an improvement for water quality.
Pete, second.
There is a motion on the table. All in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, Mr. Hanfield. Actually, now we have to pass IWWCC 2112. Do I hear a motion?
Doug, so moved.
Pete, second.
There's a motion on the table. All in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
Unanimous, so moved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Yeah.
You too, thank you.
New business, IWWCC number 21-13, 217 to 229 North Warwickers Hill Road. needs to be tabled.
Yep. Yep.
Doug, so moved.
Pete, second.
Motion on the table, all in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
Unanimous, so moved. Other business, none. Violations, none. Move to adjourn.
Pete, motion to adjourn.
Doug, second.
Motion on the table, all in favor?
Doug, aye.
Pete, aye.
It is unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Dan,
Yep.
do you think that if you ask the city manager to appoint people to the open positions, it might help things?
We've put that out there because for wetlands and for commission on the city's plan, we're down a number of people. So it's always a little nerve wracking to make sure that we have a quorum these days.
Okay,
So we'll prod them again, but if you know any volunteers that live in the city, please ask them to go online and fill out the application. We'd appreciate it.
and is there anybody on the commission that hasn't re-signed for the commission?
I can check with Jackie next door. I believe everyone that's on has reapplied, but I'll let you know at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Take care,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
Happy New
Stay
Year.
healthy.
Bye.
Happy New Year.